You're cleared.
Yeah, we got ball with us.
Picked up by...
Yes, sir.
Okay, just sped up considerably. He is
Okay.
a mover, and he has got his lights on.
We're going to need him.
He slowed down considerably, but he's still moving. There's another one up the road.
Okay, down 300 feet.
That's why I found right.
Let's take the legal one, Charlie.
Roger that.
Okay.
Oh,
look at that.
we got dozens.
I don't want a gun.
Going after the lead.
You need to go down 300 feet.
I want a gun.
You got one.
I want to stop him.
1,
45.
4, 6 trucks. Okay, pilot, we're all right. Stop. Let's get it out.
Okay.
Hit on.
Go.
Hit on number 2. Hit on number 2.
I can't say it, we're breaking out.
And what kind of airspeed you want right now?
My name is
Roger, give it back, Gunners.
Sarah. One just blew up.
Roger.
Yeah, the truck that was on fire blew up.
You come up to 10605.
And pilot, we're not moving down the road as far as block south. We're moving down to truck number 5.
What are we doing that for?
We cannot see the other truck.
Okay. Sorry, he just blew up again.
And that fire is big enough to blow all the trucks on the curve. In fact, it's blocking my truck out now.
Rod, we just got 4 trucks.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, we can get. I think we got them all.
Oh, Rex.
Uh-oh.
Get out of here. Let's break right. Keep your head in. Keep your head in. Keep your head in. Don't.
Underneath.
Don't let me go in first.
Turn around.
Keep on this.
6 o'clock. 10 more rounds. 3
Roger.
o'clock.
Keep on this stick.
Going at us.
In action earlier this month, U.S. Marine Corps jets unleash a heavy bomb attack on Hill 861 near Quezon, South Vietnam. Hills 881 North and 881 South are in the background as Marine Corps jets of the 1st Marine Air Wing come in fast and low to drop conventional and napalm ordnance in support of the ground forces. On the day before this film was taken, pilots from the wing flew more than 150 sorties in support, and throughout the 12-day battle that followed, more than 1,500 tons of air ordnance were delivered in assisting the Marines to take the high ground. Marines of G Company, 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines are shown here moving toward the high ground in the early phases. Action began on the high ground to the front when an enemy force struck a small unit of Marines just east of Hills 881 North and 881 South. However, once it was determined that the North Vietnamese forces were located on the high ground in strength, it became imperative for the Marines to drive them off these strategic points. At Phu Bai, Marines of E Company, 9th Marines, loaded out to reinforce the troops near Quezon. Earlier, another airborne reinforcement had been completed when a Marine Rifle Battalion was lifted into Quezon by helicopters and C-130 transports. The 1st Reinforcing Unit, the 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel E.R. DeLong, had moved quickly into the high ground to maintain pressure against the enemy. Colonel DeLong's battalion had been called away from a special landing force operation which it had been conducting just south of the DMZ near the coast. The troops loading out here will take part in one of the most significant actions on May the 4th, when E-29, brought in to replace a hard-hit company from the 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marines, engaged an enemy platoon and all but wiped it out by killing 16 enemy and probably putting another 30 out of action. The operation against Hills 861 and 881 built rapidly after the first contact on 861, and within hours, reinforcements, including those flown in from Phu Bai to Quezon, joined a small force of riflemen and artillery observers. On the following day, a command group from the 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marines landed at Quezon. Moving into position, these Marines fought more than 3 hours against automatic weapons and the fire of heavy mortars before their automatic weapons and the power of their supporting artillery and other supporting arms overpowered the enemy. With the rapid buildup putting 2 battalions in action above the Quezon Valley, a day was spent in patrolling and planning, and then the 2 battalions attacked the hill 861. Resistance was sporadic following the heavy artillery preparation, and the hill was in Marine hands by nightfall. As the bombardment continued, it became apparent that the enemy had pulled back to concentrate his defenses on the twin peaks of 881 South and 881 North, which overlooked the Marines on Hills 861, just 3 kilometers from the higher terrain. The Marines quickly consolidated their positions on 861 and continued hammering the 2 881 hills with artillery and airstrikes. Throughout the 12-day action, well over 18,000 rounds of artillery were fired in support of Marine units, and over 1,500 tons of aviation ordnance were dropped by Marine pilots flying A-4, F-8, and F-4 jet aircraft, including general-purpose and napalm bombs. Following a day of extensive airstrikes and a night of effective artillery bombardment, the Marines continued their battle toward the top of 881 North and 881 South against what was now estimated to be a reinforced enemy regiment. The battle for Hill 881 North and 881 South continued for 4 days, and the Marines spent 2 additional days mopping up on both hills. The battle for the 3 hills above the Quezon Valley cost the Marine units involved 138 dead and 397 wounded, of which no more than 270 required medical evacuation. By this time, indications were clear that the Marines had defeated 2 well-equipped North Vietnamese Army regiments. The action was a continuation of that which had been going on in this area just below the demilitarized zone since early summer of 1966, when Marines defeated the 324th B Division of the North Vietnamese Army in Operation Hastings. Other such pitched battles have been fought in the same general areas in a series of continuing prairie operations. Lieutenant General Lewis Walt, commander of the 74,000 Marines in I Corps, has pointed out that since the Tet Truce in February, his Marines and ARVN forces have thwarted 7 communist planned offensives in the northern I Corps area. While the triangle of hills above Khe Sanh remains firmly in Marine control, operations to seek out the enemy in this northern...
The battle for Bu Dap is supposed to be an all-Vietnamese operation, but it's becoming more Americanized every day. American helicopters and fighter planes raking the North Vietnamese positions that surround the Special Forces camp, and an all-American fire base known as Jerry. The 1st Air Cavalry Division reoccupied this abandoned fire base only 5 days ago. And now, like Bu Dap, Jerry is surrounded and under siege. Now these Americans are racing against time to build new bunkers before enemy artillery zeroes in on Jerry. For some, the race has already been lost. 5 GIs have been killed and 11 wounded here at Jerry today alone. Moving around is done at one's own risk. The operational commander, Lieutenant Colonel Ronald Rasmussen, took the same risk when he paused for a moment to answer a question.
Colonel, what do you think the enemy's intentions are for the Bu Dap area as a result of the last week's action?
Well, I think he has 2 things in mind. First of all, he'd like to upset the pacification program here in this particular district. And secondly, if the opportunity presents itself, he'd like to overrun the district headquarters.
Do you think the new pressure here...
Keep rolling.
This is exactly the way it's been at Firebase Jerry for the last 24 hours. You never know when that terrible, frightening word, incoming,
right over there, on the hill,
is going to start.
He's on the hill.
And there it is.
Run on!
This time, the enemy gunners were off their mark, and the shells exploded in a momentarily deserted section of the base. Jerry's defenders retaliated by firing their howitzers point-blank into the enemy positions only 30 yards beyond the perimeter. CBS cameraman Pham Boi Hoan and soundman Pham Thanh Zan repeatedly exposed themselves to enemy fire to film these scenes. A reconnaissance platoon was sent out to find the enemy mortar and ran right into a big enemy bunker. Outmanned and outgunned, the Americans beat a hasty retreat to the relative safety of the barbed wire perimeter, firing back from behind the trenches, World War I style. Helicopter gunships moved in to rocket the enemy bunkers, striking so close that shrapnel fragments whistled over Jerry's own sandbags. Firebase Jerry was reopened to give the South Vietnamese some help, but Jerry's defenders are now spending most of their time defending themselves. And there's a growing suspicion here that it is the Americans, not the South Vietnamese troops, who are the real enemy targets. Most of the Americans at Jerry are newcomers to combat. It's taken only 5 days here to make them veterans.
So that's the way it goes at Firebase Jerry, the newest North Vietnamese target. A few minutes of hard work and a few minutes of hell and fear. You may get used to it, but you never get over it. Richard Threlkeld, CBS News, Firebase Jerry, South Vietnam.